Welcome back to the Crave Show. We're here with Jason Bohannon Russell. No, I don't know. What's your middle name? I have no idea. I don't know. What's your middle name?
Jason.
Oh, that I did know that. I knew that. Hold on. I know your first name. And Christopher Ray Fikes. What is your first name? What does it start with? Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Michael Jason Russell, JRuss. Welcome back to the Crave Show.
At some point, I should really ask my parents. I never really think too about why they decided. If you want to name me Michael Jason, why not just? I mean, if you want to call me Jason, why not Jason Michael? It was like my dad's name was Michael too, so I understand they wanted to keep it, but why not put it in the middle? Just,
yeah.
You know.
Did anybody ever call you Michael Jason or MJ?
No, not really. I mean, There was always a little bit of. There was one high school friend of mine. Actually, the one that I said watched a little bit of Crave, Dave. He used to call me Mike just to be funny. But no, every once in a while, somebody will, hey, Mike. The thing is, I don't respond. And so it as a joke, it loses its value pretty quickly if I'm just oblivious to
Yeah.
I mean, it takes me forever to respond to Michael.
So who gave you the JRuss moniker?
Oh, I don't know. That's been a long time.
I mean, like, was that in high school even, like back then? Like
college for sure.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that was high school as well. It was definitely more prevalent in skydiving. But when I was in college, I got a nickname freshman year that just stuck the whole time, and so that's what everybody called me. And then people that I see from college to this day still call me that. So
what was it?
With nothing to do with my name, Cass, for Casanova. And it was just so stupid. It had nothing to do with being attractive or
were you a Casanova?
With women or no. I was having lunch with some friends freshman year that I had really just met, and one of the guys had been there for a few days or a week maybe. I got there like the day we were supposed to get there, but everybody else came early. And he had this massive crush on this girl from the dorm close to ours. And all of lunch, he's been talking about her for at least a few hours. And because he had met her, and they chatted a little bit, but that was it. And, or no, they hadn't met. He just wanted to. He's enamored of her. So we're at lunch, and she's in the lunchroom, and she's so hot, blah, 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 blah. I'm just eating my lunch, and he made like 4 or 5 comments, and finally I'm like, Brent, why don't you just go talk to her, dude? Just go say hello. And he's like, oh God, I can't do that. So I just got up. Hey, my friend thinks you're really attractive. You think I could grab your number, or your name, or something like that? She's like, oh my God, sure. And her name's Michelle. And I got her number, and I took it back, gave it to him. Can we just have lunch now? And he was like, oh, you must be some kind of Casanova or something. How did you go talk to her like that? It's like, man, she's just a person. Just go talk to her. Yeah, but then that stuck. And like,
so they just started calling you Cass?
Everybody. The girl I dated in college, that I was that to her. And if I see her, she lives down in Denver. If I see her to this day, that's what she calls me. Anybody else from college, nobody calls me Jason or JRuss.
That's kind of a cool nickname, Cass. It's cool.
Stuck.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a hopeless nerd, so it was not appropriate at all. But
what college was it? What university was that?
I went to University of Wisconsin in Madison.
Okay. What did you study?
Psychology, but I intended to be a medical doctor, and so that was psych was my major, but I had core classes around the pre-med curriculum.
Yeah.
And then I thought I was going to take a couple years off of college or school and go skiing. And I didn't go back.
Never went back?
I mean, this is, self-serving to say because I didn't go back. But I, for one, I have no complaints about my life. I'm pretty happy with the choices I've made. But then the other thing is my sister's husband, my older sister's, well, they're ex now, her ex, he was a doc. They were a few years older than me, and he was in residency. And he never saw my sister. He was always busy, and they made good money. But he was never around. They had 4 kids. Like, he's just never there.
Mm-hmm.
Always working. Like his health wasn't that great because he was always working, always eating crap food, and um, he's kind of a heavier guy, like to a pretty not healthy level. And yeah, just I mean that was my sort of closest uh, look at what it was actually going to be like, and talking to him, and the times that he spent in the emergency room, and like there's I don't know, yeah, the stuff people put up their butts, and like that's what he spent most of the time talking about at family events. Is like, why would you do that? And then yeah, just 7 more years of medical school, and then psychiatric school, and it just seemed like a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah. No, when you said psychology, I do remember you telling me that because that's what I studied was psychology.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
can't say I use it very much, but
yeah.
somebody asked me the other day if I would go back to college, like if knowing what I know now, because I don't really use my degree, or not at all. Uh, but I think I would, um, it, because of the like it's kind of a middle ground between childhood and adulthood, where you kind of protected environment, like you're in the dorms and you still have class, but you got to manage yourself. And I had a job every minute that I was in college, and getting used to having your own money and paying your own bills, and but you're still in kind of a protected environment. I mean, I definitely had friends that stretched the limits on that protection, but I think I would. And you, what do you think?
It like go back, do it over again.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, as far as all that stuff that you just said, I really, really enjoyed college. I didn't like high school really at all.
neither.
Um, but I really enjoyed college. Um, I followed my brother to Texas A&M. That's where he went, and he had a bunch of good friends and was a part of a church group. And um, dude, it was I was a great student for my freshman year. In high school, I was not a good student. Um, my freshman year of college, I don't know why. I just like I was a very good student. I went to every class. I read all the books. I did everything. But then after that, I just was having so much fun. I wasn't a terrible student, but I wasn't like good. I just kind of I did more than coast, but I didn't do I think as good as I could have. I didn't put as much effort as I should have. But yeah, if I had it to do over again, I'd definitely go back. It was I mean just not necessarily for the education per se, the classroom, but just all the whole experience, the
Yeah,
growth, the learning, the friends, everything. It was really awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, let's say you could go right now and you could just study right now. You don't have to worry about money. You don't have to worry about time. Somehow we're going to just make it where you have the time that you need and you can go study any topic, any subject, whatever you want with whoever you want. What would you go study?
Uh, for sure, it would be quantum physics.
Mm,
I, I was like my second or third semester of calc. I didn't do that well, um, and physics I did okay. Um, but the same kind of thing where like I wasn't coasting. I was trying really hard, but I had a full time job, and every semester of college I was working 30, 35 hours a week, and I just was busy, and I also like to play sports and liked hanging out with my friends, and so balancing that sometimes school didn't come first on the list, but God, I love quantum physics and just the craziness of the world around us, or the universe around us, and the
hmm
things that we. I mean, there's just some crazy things that we know. Uh, eh, Here, let's talk about one. So, this is one of my favorite topics. I'm gonna hopefully I still got this on my phone browser. But yeah, I do. So, are you familiar with? I think it was an idea from the '60s that the fundamental, the most basic building blocks of matter are called quarks.
hmm
and a lot of people have heard that term. Um, Quarks typically are entangled, which means they're coupled with another quark, and
Yeah.
a lot of like electrons, I think, are the same way, and photons of light. So the basic building blocks of our physical world sometimes become entangled, and they're very difficult to separate once they're entangled. And but it can be done. And did we talk about this?
I think we talked about it a little bit. My son Corbin and I have talked about it a lot, and some of the experiments they've done on the space station, like having
Yeah,
them connected to the.
yeah,
So it's insane. Go
and
ahead. It's
yeah.
crazy.
Well, you're further along, but basically, they can. I think they can use lasers to hold one of the pair in a prism or a crystalline structure, something like that,
Okay.
and then they can physically separate the entangled particles. And they did take one to the space station, which I think was one of the furthest experiments they've done. And the upshot of all of it is that whatever you do to the one partner is instantly done to the other one with absolutely no delay, no matter what the distance is, in violation of many of the physical laws that we have. I mean, information transfer instantaneous across thousands of miles is a violation of some of the fundamental laws of our universe, but it works. And so if they can encode information into that, we would have instantaneous communication across any distance with no delay.
Yeah.
It's which is insane. And there's a book series called Ender's Game, which
Yeah.
they made a movie out of the first one,
Yeah.
and they'll never make movies out of the next three because it's this really philosophical look into what it would be like for human beings to encounter other intelligent species and how that might look. And we've developed AI, which is to a crazy level, but they basically, we have this war that is seen in the first book, and we pretty much wipe out the alien species, and then they kind of pull back, um, and we recover some of their technology, and we call their communication device the Ansible. And the Ansible is exactly that. They don't know how it works, but they can recreate it. But then when they make the two of them, whatever distance they are, they instantly talk across light years. And the guy that wrote it, something Scott Orson Scott Card or something. I'm blanking his name right now, but he was kind of a closet physicist.
Hmm.
Okay, so getting back to those entangled photons, did you know they photographed those entangled photons?
I don't think so. I don't think I've heard that.
They did.
How would they?
Can you see that?
Oh yeah, it looks like a yin and yang.
It is a yin and yang.
Like that. Like that's a legit like
Yeah.
or whatever. Not a regular photograph, but something like electron microscope or something.
I don't know. I mean, you can't photograph electrons with electrons, but
Something.
I don't know exactly how that is. But like if I scroll down, there's pictures of the scientists that took the pictures and
No,
blah blah
I've
blah.
definitely never seen that then because I think I would remember that.
You would remember, right?
Yeah.
Because that's so familiar as that is yin and yang.
Huh.
You telling me the yin and yang first appeared in ancient China like 352 BC or something like that.
That's crazy.
How did they get that? Because there's no coincidences in general.
That's
There's
crazy,
just
dude.
none. But I mean, somebody helped them with that information.
That's crazy. Do you know
Right?
much about the like the way that light works? And I can't remember I can't remember, but where they do the experiment where they have a slit and
Yeah.
if you measure it one way, it acts a different way. And then so you're like, okay, well, I'll measure it that way. And then it acts the other way. And like, you know what I'm talking about?
I do. It's actually a triple slit experiment with a machine that can fire a single electron, uh, one electron at a time or one photon at a time, and basically it gets into the dual nature of light, that it can be a wave and it can be a particle.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but basically if you shoot one photon at a time through these three slits, it actually makes, and it has like photographic film on the back, and so that it'll make a little dot, but each photon passes through all the slits.
It's weird.
which makes no sense at all. But it's the, I think that, is it the Schrodinger cat idea, that it is in one state or the other, but you don't know until you observe it. But if you stop observing it, it does all three. Or it's
Yeah.
just like,
It's so
all
weird.
you have to do is Google the 2 or 3 slit experiment with a photon on
Yeah.
and read about it. But it just blows your mind. And
Yeah.
there's so many crazy things like that. There's a skydiver, Aaron Van Devender. He's a California guy. Used to come out to big waves. I haven't seen him in a few years now. Super nice guy, really quiet. If you ever see him, he used to wear a red jumpsuit with it looked like a tuxedo down the middle. And he is a quantum physicist, and he works in a lab, I think, in California. And he's recommended 10 or 12 books to me, and I've read them all. Comprehension, I can't really say, but
Yeah.
read them all.
That's cool, man.
But his lab built a clock based on the vibration of cesium or strontium. I can't remember the atom, but it's incredibly precise. And I could be getting that wrong. And if Aaron ever hears this, I'm sorry, but I'm going to get the basic gist of the story right. That like if your phone, everybody's phone, if it stopped communicating with the internet, it would start to become inaccurate.
Sure.
And so like the microwave clock could be a few minutes off every year, it's just inaccurate. So these clocks, the clock that they built, it loses less than 1 second over the age of the universe.
Yeah, it's like an atomic clock, right? And isn't it called an atomic clock?
But way, way more accurate than anything that was ever built.
Wow.
And so they had this clock, and then they built another one, different room, somewhere on the facility, whatever. And after the second one's built, they can't make the clocks sync. They can't get them in tune with each other, which is crazy because they're so hyper accurate. But they're racking their brains, and finally they realize that like the table that one clock is sitting on is like, I don't know, a couple of inches different than the other table. And because of Einstein's theory of massive gravitational bodies dilate time, that while they were just a tiny bit off level from each other, they could not sync. Accurate? And as soon as they brought them the other table up or the table down or whatever, boom, they're in sync. Their lab wins a Nobel Prize for confirming one of Einstein's theories that was just a thought experiment.
Okay, I got to look this up. What's this guy's name? I mean, not right now, but I'm going to write his name down so I can look it up.
Aaron, like Aaron. And
dude, we need to have him on the show. That guy sounds awesome.
Yeah. Maybe I'll ask him. See how bad I messed up the story.
Aaron.
Aaron.
Yeah.
And his last name is Van Devender, VAN. Aaron, I'm sorry if I'm outing you here. he's a really mellow guy. Like
he's like I don't want to talk to
about his life. VANDEVENDER or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Surely I can find it with that. Search atomic clock or something.
But dude, that's super cool
crazy.
Story. Yeah.
That is so wild. I'm not going to pretend that I understand all that, but it's so interesting. I love hearing about it, and I love talking to people that do understand it.
There's some book that he recommended to me that was talking about an interviewer for like a newspaper talking to some scientists when Einstein was still alive, Oppenheimer, somebody, big name that we all know, and said, we understand that there are only 3 people in the world who fully understand Einstein's theory of special relativity. And the anecdote is that the guy pauses in the interview and kind of, looks up like he's thinking, and the interviewer's like, what? And he's like, I'm trying to think who the third person is. He and Einstein get it, but nobody else, which it makes it crazy to read about that stuff, because some of the smartest people that ever existed, I can't keep up with those guys, but try.
Man, that's cool. I think if I could go study anything right now, like I think I would want to study economics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like I took an economics course in college, and I did not like it at all. But I was, like I said, I wasn't really a good student, but here lately, the more I get exposed to people who love economics and like really get into it, It's so interesting. It's so interesting. There's a guy, Roland Fryer. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Dude, look him up.
Fryer.
Yeah, Roland Fryer. Really, really interesting dude. Yeah, look up some of his stuff. He's got a lot of interesting, cool stuff. But yeah, I think I would want to study economics with people who are really into it, but can like also dumb it down for me, like make it make it easy and fun to understand. You know.
Maybe we could potentially have Andy Malchiotti back on the cast because he is um, very thoroughly educated in that realm.
In
He,
economics.
yeah, in economics, and then he also is a wizard about cryptocurrency, which I think baffles
Hmm.
a lot of people. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll check in with him and see if that's something that he might want to come back on and not necessarily talk about skydiving, but give
Yeah,
everybody a
that'd be
quick
cool.
education. Yeah,
That'd be
he's
really
asked
cool.
me a couple things about. He asked me at the end of, I don't know, the Abu Dhabi trip or something, like what is the reason that currency around the world was for so long based on gold? Like what's special about gold that makes it a reasonable currency? And I don't know if you remember to ask me next week, then I'll tell you what I said, which he said was pretty close to the right answer. I resisted the urge to look it up, and just thought about like gold as a metal is not that great. It's soft. Like you can't make weapons out of it, can't make tools out of it. Why base currency off of gold, or I guess sort of secondarily silver, kind of the same boat. Like, but it's interesting to think about why the whole world's economy was based around that for like, I don't even know how long, but a long time.
Hmm.
And it has modern day relevance as far as like our currency today and how currency is controlled and what makes it actually have value. And he's super big into crypto and he thinks that's the way of the future, which it probably is, and is converting all of his money into
Hmm.
Bitcoin,
Yeah.
which I know
Something you
nothing
said a
about.
minute ago about working in college.
Hmm.
I had to work the whole time I was in university. I mean, I had to. I'm guessing you were the same way. Like it wasn't an option for me. Like if I
Hmm.
was going to pay my bills, I had to have a job.
Yeah,
I mean, my parents were awesome people, wonderful parents. My dad's still around. He's an awesome guy, but they just weren't able to. I mean, that was just the reality of our situation.
yeah.
Um, and so now I have two in college.
Hmm.
And so we just took my second oldest, Ethan, up to Abilene last weekend. And so I had told both my oldest boys, I was like, you guys got to, you got to get a job, right? Like you got to find a job in Austin. Corbin's going to be in Austin. Ethan's going to be in Abilene. And I was like, y'all got to work. You got to have a job. And then later on, it was like a few days after that, my wife in private, she said something. She's like, I know that you want them to have a job. I understand why, but they've got so much to do. They're going to be busy. They've got school, studying and activities and all this stuff. And I just, can they do that? Or I don't know if she said, can they do that? But she was just, saying stuff like that. And I told her, I was like, please don't say that to them. Like, please do
Yeah,
not, because they are absolutely capable. They absolutely can do it, and they need to do it for for a couple of reasons. But I mean, just for themselves, like they absolutely can. And she's like, I know, but it's going to be so hard. I was like, so what? Like, yeah, okay, fine, it'll be hard, but people do way harder stuff than that every day,
yeah,
and they absolutely can do it. They need to work and have a job and help take care of themselves.
yeah. I mean, I don't. Again, I in general being happy with the choice that I've made. I think like I was lucky enough that my grandparents paid for tuition, which was great. When I went to school, Wisconsin, a state school, and I was in state, it wasn't a lot, maybe $3,000 or $4,000 a semester, but that was more than I had. And my parents were working hard people, and um, two of us went to college, and one of us didn't. And yeah, a job was just, there was not. I mean, I started throwing papers when I was 12 years old, and I haven't had a job for any significant period of time since then. I haven't been unemployed.
You've always had a job since then. Yeah.
Which is fine with me. Like, I'm sure everybody, like every once in a while I'll buy a lottery ticket, mostly just spend the $4 to daydream about who I would call and say, hey, this happened. Um, but I don't know that, like, if I won the lottery, at this point, I couldn't not be doing things.
Yeah.
I would lose my mind.
Yeah. I mean, maybe a few weeks, but after that, it'd be terrible, wouldn't it? To not do anything, to not have nothing to do.
And I mean, I'm sure it would be less stressful. Like, well, to be honest, we don't make a ton of money, but we don't have a lot of expenses either. So I don't stress about money regularly, but it would just be like Forrest Gump, one less thing. And but maybe work would be a little bit different. Like I think Steph would said about saving every animal on the planet, and and I'd
Start a
start
zoo.
looking for places in Montana or North Dakota to get away from society. Um, but I'm sure that. Well, I can't say that. I'm not sure. I would still be skydiving all the time. The thing
Yeah.
that I think I would do is, right now we're limited on training because Colin's got a 9 to 5 and Andy's in Arizona and we would train every day. Hey guys, what do you want to make?
Yeah.
if I've got $100 million, let's train like 5 days a week and get after it. And maybe who are the other teams out there who want to train 5 days a week? Let's get them a salary. And then when there's
Have some real
three,
competition,
4 teams that all they did was train,
dude.
Cool. Let's see who's better.
Wow. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. There was a time when we were in Dubai that the French team, the VFS team, lost their sponsorship, and from the French Federation.
Mm-hmm.
And right around that time, Skata Dubai purchased Imperia Brava as a drop zone, which is in Spain. And I lobbied, hey, if we have a sponsored VFS team, why don't you guys have a sponsored VFS team in Imperia Brava and give them the same thing we're getting? Like, let's just start a trend. And so the French team for a couple of years got the same kind of salary as Skydive that we got. And when we met them and beat them, it was because we were better.
Yeah.
Not because we had better circumstances.
Nice. Does Skydive Dubai still own Imperial Brava?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I assumed that just from the branding. It all looks the same, very similar. That's where isn't that where Pete lives and jumps? And Ewan, I'm pretty sure Ewan Cowie that's where
it might be. For a little while, like, I don't know exactly what happened. Once we left, I kind of fell out of the know as far as stuff going on. But for a little while, Imperia Bravo was pretty dead. Like, I think all they had was maybe a porter, and it went from, they had a Beach 99 and an Otter when we were going there to train, which we did sometimes in the summertime because Dubai's so crazy hot. Have you ever jumped a Beach 99?
Is that no? I guess not.
Is
that like
I don't
a
know how
King
to
Air
describe
or no?
it. It's like a big King Air.
Okay.
With a big door, and it is way faster than an Otter to altitude, and way faster down. Like, kind of to the point where we were begging, can we get back in the Otter? This, like, running from the landing area, running to the loading area, like it was a freaking workout to make turns. And then they bought it, and there was, I don't want to get this wrong because I know the people involved, but there was some kind of, like, maybe I'll say it's a rumor. There were rumors of embezzlement from the management, and then there was kind of a slowdown there. And I don't know if those are founded or unfounded or what, but definitely things changed, and I think it's back on the upswing now. I think things are going well. They got aircraft back, and
I mean, it seems like from like social media and stuff like that, and there's people, the few little connections that I have to people, seems like it is a happening good place to be.
Yeah.
But I don't have any firsthand experience.
Yeah.
So on a skydiving topic, I realized last week, or when we were talking with Rook after we got off, I started asking you guys all those questions about getting on records. And I know that in other episodes we've talked about that, but I was like, man, why did we not talk about this on while we're recording? But just briefly go over that, because that was some interesting stuff. I was asking you, because I'm myself wanted to know and understand, and hope to be able to do that at some point. But so for
Yeah.
those listeners who didn't hear, I haven't posted that episode yet anyway, but we were talking about getting on world records and how to do that. What's the process? So lay it out there for us again.
Yeah. I mean, the the it's an evolving process for sure. But in broad strokes, there are camps that you go to. It used to be just skills camps or tryout camps, and now it's been kind of broken up into phases. So there's a phase one camp that's roughly analogous to a skills camp where it's smaller, maybe just a single plane. Phase two camps were the kind of like tryout camps where it's a minimum of two planes, maybe three, depending on what the drop zone can support. And so in the past, you went to skills camps, and then when it was the tryout camp, we had a certain number of invites to give out for each tryout camp, and generally it was around 20 or 10, depending on how many camps you were going to host and how many you get. So like Australia as a country, I think got 20 invites, and Canada got 10, and South America got 0, even though they should have gotten some. And it's evolved into more of the phase camps, just to try to get away from some of the less popular things that happen. But anyway, if you want to go, you go to these camps. You can be upfront with the organizers about sort of your intent, like, hey, I don't think I'm really ready for records, but I'd like to start getting involved in the process, and they can slot you accordingly, with like a little bit further on the outside kind of a slot, less people waiting on you, less stress perhaps. And Raj, for instance, Raj, that was on the show months ago,
Mm-hmm.
he's a great example of somebody who, like he said, I'm not really ready. I want to start coming to camps, and he wasn't ready. And he, he's at the little dot in the video that's so far away that like he can see the formation, but he's nowhere near us. And then breakoff happens. And I mean, there's not much debriefable other than somebody looking at him just out of the door on exit. And okay, well, that approach was, we can talk about that. And then each camp, he would just get a little bit closer and a little bit closer. And finally, in 2018, we didn't get a record that year, but he was on the attempts. And in 2022, I think was the last one, he was also on that. And his skill progression, it's a little bit like, in my opinion, a little bit like being on a team or getting involved in competition. Getting involved in the records means it gives you a tangible goal, and you start working on the skills that once you go to the first camp and you hear the things that the organizer said, you're not on level, your approach, your break off, your 180, whatever, you start learning all of the skills that you need, and then eventually, hopefully, you're ready. But sorry, go ahead.
I went on because you and Rook were saying, yeah, go look on the STC website and some of those. Dude, I could not find any
Really?
of those phase one camps. Is that like, so for that record that that we were talking about, who's in charge of it? Who's organizing it? And then is there like a central hub, a central website or somewhere where all that information, all those camps, like phase 1, 2, 3 camps are listed and stuff like that? And
well, so just bear with me for a sec. So if you go to skytochicago.com,
yeah,
and click on events,
yeah, I did that.
and there's the vertical elite. Is it on the drop down menu?
Okay, hold on.
And click that.
Whoops. Events. Yeah. Come on.
And so if you scroll down there,
Vertical elite.
It says start here with registration, phase 1, phase 2, get an invite,
Oh,
go on the record, and then VE is the vertical elite registration form, and you register now. And then if you keep
okay.
going down, there's some camps that includes it says like the first one on the calendar was August or is August 30th. It is a head up camp in the Netherlands, and then August 31st, Steph and I are hosting a head up camp, and then there's more. There's the first head down camp is I think September 28th, 29th, although there have been a few already. The stand together stuff is the head up, and VWR
Mm-hmm.
is the head down.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, and that one. So that LSD camp, that's in Houston.
Yeah. So who would be running it down there?
Probably is that not Alethea and Tex?
It could be. Let me just click on that.
Yeah, it says Alethea Austin.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, there's been sort of a shift in the yeah, Lethia, cool. There's been a shift in sort of some of the organizer side. Um, cool. So hopefully everybody can find that if they want.
Nice.
Just some new blood in the organizer side, which is actually
well,
nice.
that's awesome. Okay, no, I was looking in the wrong place the other day when I was looking. So thank you.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
man, Houston. That's right here. I could maybe actually try to go to that one. That's a phase 1, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would really recommend it. I mean, even if for people who, I mean, there's sort of a minimum skill set, and we can talk about that a little bit. That you have to, unless you're in the base, which is unlikely for a lot of new people. You've got to float or you've got to dive, and I got my phone here. They're very similar body positions. I don't have a doll, but if you imagine the people who float, they got out before the base. They are closer to the earth. They need to be relatively flat coming up, and kind of an arched like angle fly body position. And the people who dive, the base left before them. So floaters, they left before the base. Divers, the base left before they did, and they have a very similar body position to attack forward with an angle fly, but now it's more aligned on the vertical axis where they're diving. They're going faster than the base. Floating is going slower than the base.
Yeah.
And so you need to be able to get to both of those body positions, which it's just the same position but putting it on a different axis, kind of. You need to be able to match the speed of the base once you get there, which is a tough learning curve, to be honest. Like most people probably don't put enough emphasis on that they need to understand like when to match that speed. And so we at all the camps, hopefully not all, but most of the camps, we have over floating or over diving, and that creates a safety issue because you are then going up into people that are coming down that don't expect you to be there, and their reaction, their ability to react to you is really limited because of the sort of their vertical looking at the base, and if you're not coming from right in line with their view, they're just not going to see you.
Yeah.
And so let's see, on the 200 way, I don't know a good way to explain this, maybe with a little drawing. So this math doesn't work out perfectly, but like if you think about that 100 people are floating and 100 people are diving, and the base is kind of in the middle. I mean, that's not quite right because the base has people and there's some people that don't do either. But there's an area of intersection basically over on the edges where that's the like if you overfloat a little bit, but you're way off of the end, it doesn't matter at all. But at that sort of confluence there. If you overfloat there, that is the sort of the dangerous spot. So we always have to talk about, hey guys, pace, you're in these spots. You really need to be a little bit circumspect about getting the speed matched before you go smoking up into people that don't see you coming, because that could obviously be disastrous. You need to be able to take a dock. You need to be able to handle turbulence, flying with other people, close proximity. Not everybody has their best moments at all times. Like people crash into each other. And I mean, crash is maybe a bad way to say it. They bump into each other. And usually those are not tragic. It just kind of, you gotta deal with some crappy air every once in a while. And then there's fundamentals about sort of how you fly on level and what does that mean in a big way. And all of this, it can be a little bit intimidating until you go to the camp and you realize, like, man, that I didn't know this stuff, but it's not magic. It's just somebody explaining it to you in a way that makes sense. You can ask questions. It's not rocket science. You just gotta kind of get used to the process.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. Well, I'm gonna try to go to one. It sounds really fun.
I mean, that Alethea, and that one's in Houston. You should sign up.
Yeah.
It's super fun.
It sounds really fun.
Yeah. And it's a little bit tough sometimes for people if you don't compete, you're not on a team. A lot of people are not used to having their actions in free fall scrutinized. And so I'm not saying this will be a problem for you, because I really don't think it'll be that way. But for some people, when you give feedback in a crowd, for them, that's a personal attack, and it ends up being not super productive. So if anybody's listening to this and you want to go to big ways, you just, like, you're paying for somebody to tell you what to do better. And if I don't need to tell you, I mean, it's so rare that somebody's perfect on the skydive. It's just not a thing. And so even experienced flyers, like, hey man, you got to fix your level a little bit. But the people who go there and take that as a personal attack, it takes kind of the fun out of the event of, man, he just called me out in front of 40 people, this freaking guy, and you're like, that's you're doing your job, and that's what I'm supposed to be doing. It's telling you how to get better. So you just got to approach it sort of with the right mindset.
Yeah, well, that's good, and maybe prepping yourself beforehand, going into it with that mindset, like, hey, this is, if you have that expectation, maybe that makes it a little easier to swallow.
Yeah. Leave your ego at the door and just sit down and learn.
Yeah. One other thing that was on my mind, when we had talked, I think it was episode right after Summerfest. And I was telling that story about messing up those 2 exits out of the Skyvan, and that I got some feedback, from Tommy. And, so then somebody, had listened to that episode and said, dude, why didn't you share what his feedback? Like, I want to know what he said. What did he tell you? Like, and, so I was like, yeah, I should have shared that. And I feel so dumb saying it, because when Tommy, the coaching that he gave me, it was so simple and so basic and so obvious after he told me I feel dumb, but I mean, it is what it is. So both of those exits, I messed up really bad. The first one, when we got down, the other people who were jumping with me, luckily they were friends, but they were laughing at me so hard, because I was actually, like, at one point, like, swimming, and so they just thought that was super hilarious, super awesome. And anyways, what Tommy said, he said, just remember, you're exiting into the burble of the plane. He goes, you're leaving, you're instantly in dead air. And he goes, if you're not used to that, if you're always jumping out of the side of the plane, which, I am, and most of us are, he goes, there's no air. He goes, the main thing you need to do is, like, just wait, man. Just wait, just chill out. He goes, just don't try to fly. He goes, if you try to fly out of the gate, you're gonna mess up. And that's exactly what I was doing. I tried the first time on my belly, trying to fly instantly, and I over rotated, ended up head down swimming. And the next time I was like, all right, I know what I'm doing. I went on my back, and, like, tried to punch out and, like, fly right away again, like, all awkward and out of control. And So then, I mean, that was it. It was that simple. Just leave the plane and wait for a second.
Yeah.
As soon as you feel the wind, then start flying. And that's all I did on the next one. And it was super easy, barely an inconvenience. So it's
um,
nothing profound. And like I said, pretty obvious once you hear it, but I don't know why I didn't think about it.
so what that makes me think is the number of people that, not necessarily a Skyvan exit, but the number of people I've talked to. And when we first start working with people, I'll go over some of what I think are the basics of skydiving. And at its most fundamental level, in my mind, we push wind one direction and we go the other. And that is all of skydiving. But a lot of times when I say that to people, I can see in their eyes just like, oh, wow, yeah. And then the follow up to that is there are two lines, there's a vertical line and a horizontal line. If you don't have an angle somewhere in between those two lines, you're not pushing wind and you're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And everything revolves around making angles to the wind. And the same thing, like you can see the light bulb come on, that they can do it, like they can move, they can fly, they can push wind, but they never quantified it that way.
Yeah.
And so sometimes even those simplistic things connect the dots that, but until you hear it,
Yeah.
maybe it just didn't organically grow.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And that like hearing someone like that, hearing someone say, we're just using the wind to go where we want to go, or pushing the whatever like just having it verbalized, articulated, having someone
Yeah.
articulate is like, oh, okay, yes, that gives me something to kind of latch onto, and a clear picture.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So that was the profound coaching and instruction I got from Tommy. Thank you, Tommy.
You don't want to be wrong any longer than you have to be.
Yeah.
He helped you.
He did help me a lot. And that next jump, I was with four other guys, and we were all so excited when we came down. We were like so stoked because it was we nailed the exit. Then we just flew nice and tight together, some big sweeping turns. We got down and everybody was stoked, man. Those are good jumps.
Cool. Cool. Well, I wanted to briefly touch on the fact that Nationals is coming up. Get my calendar out so I can tell everybody when it starts. USPA National starts September 12th and runs through the 21st. And VFS Nationals look like it's 19 through 20, probably 19 through 21. But I think it could, why does it say that? My calendar says two different things. So could go to the 23rd, could go to the 21st. I'm not sure based on my calendar, but VFS is near the end. And that's at Sky of Chicago this year, which would be nice. Home drop zone is always nice. And what else is coming up? End of the season's coming up. That's always a bummer. I feel like it goes by so fast. Summerfest's already over. I got Rookie Fest, and then that's the end of the year. Or Nationals, and then Rookie Fest. But
yeah,
it's been feels like a quick season.
Yeah.
And you guys just don't have seasons down there, huh? It's just hot and then hotter.
Yeah, I mean, it is actually maybe it's starting to cool off a tiny bit. Like last week, I went outside at like 9:35 at night, and it was still like 96 degrees. And last night, I went outside at like 9:15, and it was 86 degrees. So I was like, okay, I think it's actually starting to cool off a little bit, maybe. Yeah, I mean, well, it'll get cold for a little bit, but obviously not like what you guys have. What are you writing now?
I'm gonna put some pressure on you at the end of the podcast.
Okay.
So I wanted the yesterday or the day before yesterday, we had I just wanted to talk briefly about exit separation, because we had to come up, and not necessarily in a bad way, but I talked to a newer jumper. I think she's got 40 or 50 jumps, and I think we've talked about the fact that we have iPads in the back of the plane that they have a GPS, it can tell ground speed, and so it basically has a big display in numbers of exit separation, how long you're supposed to wait between groups. And with relatively few jumps, not casting shade on her 40 or 50 jumps, but just that's where she's at. She didn't really understand that the exit separation is the entirety of the process.
Mm.
And so when she saw 8 seconds, she thought, let me just look out and watch them and count to 8. And I mean, it's a caravan. Everybody knows that she's new. Nobody wants to start yelling at her, which I think is great. But she paused. She looked out and paused, and we thought she was going to climb out. She looked out again, and we thought she was going to climb out. And she looked out again, and then she did actually climb out. But that third time, probably we would have said something if, "Hey, you got to go." And instead of 8 seconds, it turned into like 17.
Yeah.
And so just for those newer people out there, exit separation is the entirety of your climb out process. And only when it's pretty long, like, if the ground speed is dipping down into like 60 knots or something like that, you've got 12 seconds of separation. Then you can kind of take a look out at the other group. I mean, you can briefly look at them at any time, but imagine the plane's going fast and it's 5 seconds and you want to climb out, and it's going to be more than 5 seconds just getting out of the airplane, and a ready, set, go being roughly 2 seconds. Like, it really stacks up. So when Steph landed off, because she was the small wave free fly at the end of the jump run, I was like, hey, my wife just landed off. So if you could use just 8 seconds, because more than 2 groups could have gotten out in the time that you took. So I just wanted to touch on that because it was a good learning point for
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah. And how are we doing on time? Oh, we're getting close. I think that was kind of the end of stuff. I wanted to see if you wanted to publicly commit to signing up to that big weight camp.
The one in Houston?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go.
Yeah, cool. All right. So you can. I don't know if I closed it down. I'm gonna go back. Did you keep the dates?
Well, let me double check. Let me make sure the dates are. It was September what? Oh, whoops. September 28th and 29th.
All right. So it's yeah.
Is that a Saturday and Sunday? What is that?
Probably.
Yeah, Saturday and a Sunday.
So, oh gosh. Oh, I can talk about this. Yeah. Yeah. So she is advertising that, as a lot of us are, with spine and rib practice, which is, I think we've talked about. Have we talked about that? Like the general picture of the formation?
I'm not sure.
Hopefully
I don't
this
think
will
we
make
did.
sense.
I don't think we talked about that.
Let me see if I can get this right here.
Oh, and we had after we talk about this, there's one, I just remembered we had an accident the other day at the drop zone that I want to talk about.
So this part right here, so the circle is the base.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then the first stinger there is the beginning of the spine.
Okay.
And then these guys are the rib portions.
Gotcha.
And then another spine person, and then more rib people, and it would kind of stack back and keep doing that. So it ends up looking kind of like your rib cage with the central spine, and then
ribs going
around.
Gotcha.
And so that is sort of the new verbiage that's being tossed around, which, according to that advertisement for Alethia's camp, that is the kind of formation that you'll be flying, and it's what we're doing in our head-up camp this weekend. Same idea. It's to we're trying to move away from pods a little bit and make it easier for the people on the outside to dock. And so far, it's been pretty good.
And as that grows bigger and bigger, they're still very stable.
Yeah. So Matt Fry is sort of in collaboration with Rook as the main organizers for the 200 way.
Okay.
And he's kind of a nerd about like data and numbers and stuff like that. Very fit nerd. So don't go up and call him a nerd. He's a pretty strong dude. But he actually got, I think, in touch with Dan BC and maybe a couple of other like very, very experienced belly fly guys, and just went over sort of their progression from how they started building bigger stuff and where they had pitfalls and stumbling blocks. And they were stuck on, I don't know what it was, but kind of a 200 number. They were stuck there for years, like a decade. And they finally started doing what we're doing, because it's been almost 10 years with the, or maybe it's been 10 years with 164 that we've been stuck on. And kind of just playing around with different formations and building different things to try and reduce the tension that existed within the formation. And this is something that we got from them. And my experience with it so far has been pretty good. Like, I agree with the reduced tension and the simplicity of the build. So I'm excited about it.
That's cool.
Yeah. So the thing, I got an email, and this was the astronaut thing that we went to, the Polaris Dawn, that we worked with those astronauts.
Yeah.
And Steph and I went down there to Florida on, let's see, what's today? Thursday. So on Monday morning, super early, we flew down to Orlando. And the launch for these guys was supposed to be Tuesday night, Monday night, super early in the morning on Tuesday. It got pushed 24 hours to super early in the morning on Wednesday. And then we came home. But it didn't end up being the Polaris Dawn, which is the humans to Mars kind of. It's not. They're not going to Mars right now, but they were going up to test the rocket. To, Starlink has a in-space communication system now. So the satellites that Starlink has been launching use lasers to communicate in space.
Okay.
And they were going to go up and test that.
Oh, okay.
But because they're not stopping at the space station, they're just going up and then they have to come back down. They don't take a lot of supplies with them. They need a good weather window for the whole flight, basically. And the weather at the end was not going to be good. So it got pushed, and then it got pushed beyond the point we could stay. But they did have a Starlink launch that we were able to go and view. So they bussed us over to Kennedy Space Center, which is that's a pretty cool place if you've never been there. And then we got to sit and watch a rocket launch, which is,
dude, that's cool.
And it's one thing just to see that crazy thing going up, and it's so loud and so bright in the middle of the night. But then they've got TV screens everywhere where they're showing like inside views of like the first stage separation, the second stage separation, the second stage firing, like how fast it's going at any one time, how far it is away from the Earth. And sadly, the first stage, SpaceX has it come down and like invert and then land on the platform. Mm-hmm. It missed.
Oh,
and so like one leg went over, and it tipped over into the water, and I think it blew up.
Oh man,
which
that's
made me sad. Man. That rocket had been up like 320 times or something like that.
Wow.
Or maybe total they've got 320. I could be misspeaking a little bit, but that rocket had been used many times.
A lot, yeah.
And then
that's wild.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat that you got to do that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it would to be honest, like we just felt like the redheaded stepchildren when we were down there, like, because they sent us emails that we totally didn't expect, like, hey, you guys are on the private list to come down and join us for this launch. And we were like, all right, we didn't know we were gonna get that, but and then Melissa Nelson and Rook Nelson were the other people that did that AFF with us, and they couldn't go. So we said, okay, well, we've got these basically like 50 hours available, so let's go down there and check it out. And even when we were there, like, we're just kind of in the back. We got our little lanyards on, and they're serving food, and we grab some food and go to the back, and like, somebody's going to say, hey, you don't belong here. And then, so we were standing in the back, and this woman came up and was hey, can I share your table? Yeah, sure. And she was the mother of the guy that's doing all the archiving, the video and photography for the whole thing.
Wow.
And she was super fun to talk to. And she said something very similar. She's like, I keep thinking they're going to kick me out because I'm in the wrong place.
That's really neat, dude. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's awesome. Okay,
so you said you had an accident there?
Yeah, we had. So I'll tell you what we kind of observed. This is, I didn't see it firsthand, but guy standing right there, he watched it, and this is what he told me. And you can kind of give any thoughts or input. But it was super hot, and the runway has been not redone like in the past week or anything, but it's pretty recent redone, so it's very very black. I mean, um, and this was mid afternoon, like 3 or so. I mean, so it was hottest part of the day, and this girl was coming in. So you've got, I don't know if you remember there at San Marcos, you've got the main landing area, and then the runway is right there next to it. And then on the other side of the runway, there is another landing area. Typically, that's like high performance. Anybody can land there if you need it as an out or whatever. But so this girl she was coming in, and let's say that this is that high performance area, and then here's the runway, and then over here would be the main landing area. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So she was coming in, and I think what she realized that she was going to either land on the runway or she was going to cross the runway very, very low, like,
Yeah.
60 feet, or I mean, very low. So what we think, this is from the perspective of somebody who saw it, he said it looked like as she got closer and closer, she right at the end decided to it looked like kind of like a flat turn and like a braked turn. So as she was turning, then he said it looked like she went ahead and like started try to like continue flaring, and maybe realized that she was a little bit high, or I mean, she was high. Somehow at some point, basically her canopy kind of, I don't think it 100% collapsed, but it basically folded. And when it did, it kind of also rocked her sideways a little bit, like pushed her sideways. So she just fell and landed basically on her side. I'm guessing maybe hip first, because they had to call the ambulance and everything, came out there and took her away. She was conscious. She was no head, neck, no back injuries, nothing like that. But from the few people taking care of her and the EMTs, sound like maybe a broken pelvis. So that was kind of what happened. There was obviously lots of speculation about what happened, what it was, but you want me to give you some of the speculations of what people kind of thought that witnessed it, or you have some thoughts, or take a
As far
guess?
as her
Or,
mindset,
no, as
or
far as like what caused her canopy to, it wasn't I don't think it was a full on collapse, but it
yeah,
was enough that, and I think she was, because I got different, one guy said, yeah, it looked like she was maybe like 20 feet above the ground. And then somebody else said, oh, it looked like she was like 50 feet. I don't think she was that high. I think it was probably more like 20 to maybe 30.
I mean, yeah. Um, I mean, speculation is always tough, but
Yeah.
people do it every time. So
Yeah. I
um,
mean, one
go ahead.
guess was just, there was not a strong wind, but a 4 to 5 mile an hour, maybe 7 miles an hour, wind coming, because that was the landing direction. So that wind is coming across the tarmac.
Yeah.
And because it was so hot, um, well, maybe as that wind went across the runway, that super hot asphalt, it was kind of creating a little bit more turbulence and kind of a little bit of an upward draft, kind of a roiling
Yeah.
air coming across and up a little bit. So right as she was maybe doing that flat turn, that's when maybe her canopy intersected with that little updraft of turbulent air, and that was just enough to kind of fold up her canopy, and she was in half brakes or maybe even deep brakes. That was just enough to make it kind of fold up, and down she went.
Yeah. 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 Well, there's a bunch of issues that come to mind, and I can start whenever. Um, as you were describing it, the first thing I wrote down was flat turn. So I'm glad that at least she was aware of that concept or that tool in your toolkit of I'm a little bit lower than I want to be, but I do need to turn. And a flat turn can conserve altitude with a much less aggressive turn and change your direction. And so there's a couple ways that people can think about flat turns. Generally speaking, you pull the toggles down a little bit, and then you can let one toggle up from there. You can pull one a little bit more, or you can do kind of a combo of those two ideas. Either way, you're trying to lose less altitude than you normally would, where you kind of put your, you put your canopy in a diving turn, you lose a bunch of altitude. This is to try and get more of a flat turn out of your canopy. One of the problems of using your toggles for turns, and have you ever heard of Brian Germain?
Sure. Yeah.
Brian Germain wrote a book called The Parachute and Its Pilot.
I've read it.
Yep, and I think he goes into a little more detail about the physics of why your canopy does not perform as you would expect after you initiate a turn. And during the recovery phase from that turn, if you have to flare before hitting the ground, your flare is going to suck. There's just not a lot of performance in it, which is why low turns are so insidious. Not necessarily that you can hit the ground while in a turn, which of course you can, but trying to recover from the turn, there's not that much left, which is why I don't know any professional canopy pilot that initiates their turn with rears or a toggle input. It is all fronts to get the performance out of your canopy, because if you do it with fronts, you still have flare potential, you still have recovery potential, or a harness is the same thing. You still can get out of a bad spot with your toggles, whereas if you turn with your toggle, you can't, or it's way less. So I don't have a great physical explanation in terms of the exact reasons why that is, but it is. So generally speaking, when you're low to the ground, if you do turn, you're going to have to expect that your flare won't perform very well, and you're just going to have to like PLF or do the best that you can with what you've got at that point. However, setting that up in a little bit different way, one of the things that I know we've talked about in the past is having bases of like a first base, second base, third base, and these are the entry points of the different parts of your canopy pattern. First base typically being the start of your downwind leg. You've been in the holding area and you get to first base and start. Second base is where you turn to crosswind for the crosswind part of your leg, and then third base would be where you turn to final. And you can have swoop beeps in I think pretty much all audibles have that now, or if they don't, you should get one that does, because then you get much better with the accuracy of your pattern, but also you start to understand how much time you've got in each leg. And so that really can help with the consistency of your landing of like, man, I just hit second base and I still have to cross the runway. I need to start cutting closer to third base or I'm going to miss it, because you get like, I know within maybe a half a second from my first audible beep to my second, and my second to my third, like my brain knows when it's going to happen. Like, yeah, it's going to beep now, and it beeps now. And I do that next part of my pattern. So you do really get accustomed to the amount of time that you've got. And that can be critically important when there's obstacles out there that you need to be maneuvering around. Like how much time have I got to do this? And at the bottom end of everything, time starts to go pretty fast. So then the other thing that I wrote down, canopy collapse and turbulence. The turbulence, like last weekend we were jumping here, we were landing south, which meant that my base leg, crosswind leg, was across the tarmac. It was cold in the morning, or colder, in the 70s, maybe upper 70s. And then the sun came out later in the day and it got hot. And the pattern that I had been doing that took me across the tarmac, and this is at, my first base is 1800, my second base is 1400, and my third base is 1000. At 1000, I'm starting my 450 or just after that. So between 1400 and 1000, I was crossing the tarmac, which was fine when it was cold. But I did it once when the sun had been out, and now the asphalt is kicking up heat, and I like bucked at like 1100 feet, which is not a comfortable feeling. And so I moved my bases so that I'm no longer over the tarmac. Now I'm going to approach over the grass, which is a much less likely place to find turbulence. And so just being aware of that, you said it was super black, and like for sure that's putting off a bunch of turbulence. And then the other problem with that is that typically dust devils develop at the intersection of two different thermal uh, spots.
Mm.
So, like right at the edge of the runway and right at the edge of the grass, where it's a little bit colder in the grass and it's a little bit warmer on the tarmac, it can start that swirling air. Which, if you don't have dust to put in the dust devil, it's not named appropriately at that point, but you can't see it. And so that swirling air can start but be totally invisible. And in my experience, I'm not a scientist of dust devils, but in my experience, those can go thousands of feet high, 1,500 feet for sure. And so they really represent a big problem. I'm totally generalizing that this woman had an uncross brace canopy and non-cross brace canopy, and that if she's a newer jumper and struggling with her landing pattern, then that's even more susceptible to dust devil problems. I think that's everything except if she's aware of flat turns, either somebody did her a solid by explaining that to her, or she took a canopy course. Either one. I mean, canopy course would have been way better, but a lot of these issues are covered in your first canopy course, because there's so much information that you need just to be a safe skydiver and land yourself back on the ground. But this is some of the fundamentals of a 101 style canopy course.
Yeah. To her credit, she did. She was coming. I'm not going to say from a long spot, but she was coming. Like she never entered. She didn't enter the pattern over on a downwind and then do a. This was like she was coming in from a long
She
spot.
opened and she was on final.
Well, yeah. I mean, from where she was coming from, and so to get to that high performance area, like had she come up short, she would have been on the other side of a fence in private property where it's a farmer that we already have a tenuous relationship with. And there's kind of a known thing like, hey, try not to land in his field. He's kind of already upset at us. So, she's coming straight in, trying to get across that fence, and then realize, oh shoot, I am across the fence, but now I'm going to land on the, so,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
yeah, so it's just a few different things. But
in her sort of introspection after that, I think for everybody there needs to be a what's the right way to say it, a measuring of the dangers ahead. And is a low turn better than scraping across the runway? And I don't have a good answer there. Like, to be fair to her, I can understand not wanting to go onto the runway. However, aircraft are usually fairly visible. And if you can find your jump plane, and if she's a lower jump number person, that means that it's more likely that I'm on the ground a couple of minutes before the plane gets back to the ground. But somebody who's on a bigger canopy, that's not the case. Their canopy ride's a lot longer. So you do have to just pay attention to, like, where is our otter or caravan or whatever it is you dropped out of. Can I see it right now? And then, of course, no, I'm not telling people to land on the runway. I'm just saying that you got to balance what's worse at this moment. Like, if the plane's nowhere to be seen, I can not see a plane either direction. Can I potentially just keep going and try and flare my way across the runway? As bad as it is to cross the runway low, is that better than a potentially low turn? That, I mean, in this case, if she low turned and broke a pelvis on turbulence, I mean, there's so many variables there. It's hard to say which one's better and which one's worse. But hopefully people are doing that kind of calculus in their head of like, okay, this isn't the spot that I wanted to be in, but what's the safest thing I can do right now?
Yeah.
Including
or land and piss off the farmer, land in it. You got a big wide open field, just make him mad,
and I've been like, we landed off, I don't know, a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, some training jump we landed off, and Colin and Ace landed on the other side of the river. I was able to make it back, but my landing was not great. And like what I was looking at, I just didn't have a ton of great options. They took a crosswind landing behind the tree line, which ended up, Ace had a hurt back because he slapped in pretty hard. Colin managed it okay. And I landed fine, but like put it down where I'm a little bit embarrassed to say, like, I had no more options left. If I didn't land in the spot that I did, I was getting hurt. And so, you kind of just got to do the best you can with what you got at that moment. So sorry to hear that. Hopefully she's going to make a full recovery and hopefully be able to examine that after and kind of figure out what could have been different or maybe better. I don't know.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you've done it again. You've wasted another perfectly good hour.
Hour 15.
Hour 15. That's right.
And let's get back to the really important stuff. If somebody debunks my yin and yang from the very beginning of entangled photons, I want to hear it, because I don't know that there's any stronger proof in my mind that we're living in a freaking sim. Like how did 3,000 years ago Chinese people come up with the yin and yang that just so happens to be entangled photons?
Wait, why does that mean that we're living in a sim? How did you make that connection?
I'll think about that and get back to you.
Okay.
Because it's been an hour and 15.
Okay.
Yeah, we live in a trippy world.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, JRuss, man.
Yeah.
It's been good.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm going to put you on the spot. You haven't been at home. You haven't used your built-on dryer, have you?
I don't think I've had 3 spare days.
All right.
I know it's still over behind my stuff in the team area.
Yeah.
But we do now. I have a few days, so maybe next week I can try it.
And go make sure you go see if that jersey is there.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
The Onion Air Force guys. They're such cool guys. They're really fun, man. I've been chatting with them, messaging, and Daniel, one of the guys, he's been posting some Crave stuff, and he's helping do Spanish subtitles for a lot of the courses. They're really cool guys. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is it a wear it in free fall kind of thing? Because I'm organizing tomorrow.
Yeah. No, it's an awesome jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll get a little screen grab for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool.
All right. See ya. Have fun,
man.
All
right, man. See you, Chris. See you, everybody.
Bye.